Welcome to the Light of Sirio podcast. My name is Dori Fari and I will speak with a realized spiritual master about his views on life and the topic of spirituality.
Hazur Maharaj Sanji, you're my Sadgurus, I bow down to you. Hazur Maharaj Sanji, you're my Sadgurus, I love you. Hazur Maharaj Sanji, you're my Sadgurus, I adore you.
So now we arrived to the 7th episode of Series 3, and I would like to present you an interesting story because there is another Satsangi whom I asked to talk to you about, to talk to us about Sanji, because she also is an initiate of Sant Ajaib Singh and she also met him on some occasions. So I thought it would be interesting to bring to the listeners of the Light of Sirio podcast again a personal spiritual story. And this person is called Loretta. She's Italian, she's from Rome, and she's a psychologist. And Loretta was very available, but she told me that her story in fact is very different than the in between quotation marks the usual spiritual story. She said that my story is not a beautiful story like a fairy tale with Sanji, because my story was very tormented and very, very difficult for me. And it was not for Sanji, it was for certain situations, for a certain situation which happened to my life. And also for me, this was very new because I know Loretta for many years now, but I never knew about these things. And she told to me that it is so difficult. At the time when I asked her a couple of weeks ago, I asked her to do this conversation with me, and she told me at the time, look, for me it's extremely difficult to remember these things and to recall them. So we agreed that she said, anyway, I would like to share my story with people because I think it might be useful for others. So she said, I don't want to be selfish, to keep it for myself, because I have gotten much grace from the masters and I think it's right to share it with others. So we agreed that she writes down her story for me and then I can tell you the story. So this is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to tell you the story following a bit what was written to me. Of course I read it very well, and I'm going to use the personal I, first person. But of course this is in the name of Loretta from Italy. So, the story of Loretta is the following. Towards the end of the 70s, I began to follow the lessons of a yoga teacher of Hatha Yoga lessons, and this person was an initiate of Master Kripal. And after each lesson, yoga lesson, when we did the asana practice, he was telling to us about healthy lifestyle, vegetarian diet, spirituality, and especially the teachings of Master Kirpal. So by and by, as we listened to him, we found it very fascinating. So I became vegetarian along with some friends of mine. So we by and by took shape around him 5 close associates of his yoga students. So we really began to take him as our teacher of life, because he was really teaching us good things for life. And that was how we first met with spirituality, this kind of oriental spirituality, and Santmat. And became so close with him that sometimes he invited these 5 people among me to his house, or when he went on holidays, we went to see him, to visit him. And so we had a very close by sharing with him, the 5 of us. So we felt very fortunate because we could enjoy a particular special consideration by the part of the person, from the part of the person whom we consider to be the teacher of life for ourselves. We could also say like our master. And one day this teacher gave us the news that the successor of Master Kirpal would come to Italy, to the Sant Bani Ashram in Ribolla, and in 1980 in May. So this was an occasion. So a few weeks before the arrival of Sanji, this yoga teacher took the 5 of us, these close by associates of his, and among these were also, me and my boyfriend of the time. And the purpose of this visit in the ashram was to know how the retreat was going to be organized, and also to gather news about the successorship and this successor, Sanji. And that was the first time we met Sirio ji, and I remember very well the expression of his face and the special light in his eyes as he replied to us, "I follow Sanji," when our yoga teacher asked him about the authenticity of the successorship. And for us also, of course, at that point, deciding to go to attend this retreat meant to ask for initiation. So then came the time of the retreat, and of course the ashram, and back those times in the 1980s, it was very, very different than how it is now. So there was not all these comfortable structures that are available now. And we were a number of people, lots of people sleeping in tents, and it was raining all the time. So at this time, I was very delicate for cold and humidity, but strange enough, like a miracle, I didn't even catch cold. So it was like a special blessing. I remember this very well. And in fact, there are lots of particularities, the details that I just simply can't remember from this program because of all the things that happened afterwards, which I'm going to tell you later. But anyway, I have some very live, very vivid images imprinted into my memory. And these are the followings. Like, I remember very well the big room where we were initiated, where we were taught the Simran, and how we are all there repeating the Simran. And I just feel like seeing myself as I am taking the cue to enter the room, and I see myself as I am shedding tears like rivers flowing down from my eyes. And I didn't even understand where these tears come from and what's the meaning of all these tears. But I just remember that I kept weeping a lot during this staying in the ashram, that for anything than just I was shedding tears. And I remember very well Master Ajaib with his turban, with his black jacket, which he was wearing over his white clothes. I remember the song Aja Pyare, which was sang at 12 o'clock under the big tent where we had the satsangs outside. And I remember so very well the sweetness of Sanji's face and his eyes. And I remember particularly of that event during the initiation, when the master touched with his finger pointed on the forehead of each of us to be initiated, to indicate the spot where we had to concentrate in meditation. And I remember also how Master Ajaib was telling us about Master Kirpal. He often mentioned, Master Kirpal used to say, and this was very beautiful. And I also remember very well that me and my boyfriend, we had an interview with him, a personal interview with him, and I remember very well the words which he told to us. And of course the interview couldn't be very long because we were many people, but anyway we had the chance to talk to him. And I remember also very much the sensation to be immersed into a sea of strong energy which enveloped me, which was so different than anything else that I could experience before in my life. And this was a kind of energy about which one could right away understand that it was not coming from the ordinary planes. And from the physical point of view, my physical sensation was like feeling strangely light, so light, like walking above the ground. But in spite of this extraordinary experience, after a short time, the situation changed such that took me far or took me distant from Sant Mat. And everything began with a small fact that me and my boyfriend went to talk with our yoga teacher because as we had interview with Sanji, he told to us certain things which were not correlating with certain other things which this yoga teacher taught to us as a basic principle in life. So we wanted to know, of course, his viewpoint on it, but it has become a very confusionary something, because he explained to us that most probably it's our fault that we didn't understand well what was said to us, or if we understood it well, then the translators made a misinterpretation and they didn't understand the words of the master. Because of course then there were two translators involved in this. There was Papu, who was translating the words of Sanji from Punjabi, and then Sirio ji, who translated from English into Italian. And so therefore then came out the discourse that it was our fault because everybody should learn and understand how to interpret and adapt the words of the master into one's own life, to the particular situation of life. So from this point on, it began like very softly and slowly, but by and by becoming ever more radical, that kind of teaching by our yoga teacher. Like he began to feel it into our heads, because we kept going to do yoga practice with him, practice together, and then he was like influencing our minds, so that by and by became like a radical reinterpretation of Sant Mat, like changing the message of Sant Mat. And the general concept became in practice that the message of the masters comes, and those who are very innocent and very immature, they take the words of the masters by word, but because they are less advanced. And in the meanwhile, those who are more advanced, they are able to elaborate and interpret the teachings and the message of the masters into their own life, the way it matches their life, because that's to be advanced. And That's the capacity to be able to interpret into one's life the teachings of the master, and it's not to be taken word by word. So, of course, it inhaled that this yoga teacher, he was the most advanced above anybody else. And this, our small group of his 5 close by associates, we were those who were like more ahead on the way. And meanwhile, the others who were following the words of the master, they were the immature ones, those who couldn't understand the elevated teachings. So I must say that mine and our main mistake was, we did a mistake because we took initiation from Sanji, but still, because we had this association with this yoga teacher, we kept considering him as our teacher of life. And this brought us into a deep confusion. And in fact, in the beginning, Kirpal Singh and Ajaib Singh, they were like the goal, the target to reach. And by, they just ended up like being part of our story, just part of the path, of our own personal path. So I stopped attending, by I stopped attending Satsang, and I took distance from Sant Mat, and we only kept from those teachings the vegetarian diet. And actually when we met Sanji, shortly after, we booked flight tickets to go with the group to Rajasthan, to the ashram of Sanji. But by the time arrived, the moment when we had to get on the plane together with the group, we knew it. We got on the plane knowing that we won't go to Rajasthan with the group, and as soon as the plane landed, we went as tourists to see Bombay, Delhi, and we went around in India, just like this, fooling around, instead of going to Sanji. And after this, because of some changes that happened in the personal life of our yoga teacher, then he began to express always a more extreme vision of the things, which anyway in the beginning seemed like dialectically and intellectually fascinating, and because they were so intriguing, the things which he said, he really made one ponder over the things, and it seemed like everything was possible, that everything could be put into discussion, and everything could be put into could be observed from another point of view. And by so much that we could arrive to the point that we asked something for a particular situation, life situation, from the yoga teacher, and he said something, and after 2 days he said the opposite of this. It was mind-blowing. Or, for example, one took a decision in life, and one day it was said that was a brilliant and great decision. The next day we were scolded for this and rebuked and said to be like ignorant or bastards. So this was a very confusionary situation altogether, but still we were pulled by him because it seemed so fascinating in the beginning, like being in a trap, like in a spiral. And at the time I was working in the public administration, but because of my personal interest and hobby, I began to study psychology at the university. But after the first year of the university, I did quit because it seemed so useless to me to study psychology or study at a university, because it seemed to me that the best things was to do with my life is to just somehow gather or reach that kind of secret of the personal evolution, following that person whom I considered at the time as the teacher of life for me, or with other word, who I considered to be my master at the time. But after some years, again, then this teacher began to do certain actions which were really, for me, against all important ethic principles, so unacceptable. And this made me just all of a sudden wake me up from this kind of clouded consciousness, and I became aware all of a sudden that it's he who was lost, and that all his teachings became like a dialectic delirium without any real sense, and the only thing that one could breathe in his presence was a great confusion, and the normalizing of the principle that anything done by an advanced person, so to say by him, because he was the most advanced, then anything done by him was right because he had a superior motivation. So, one could ask, why did it took so long to understand what was happening? But I can tell you that I asked from myself so many times during these years, how come? But if I try to give a reply to this question, I could say it was because I was young, I was innocent, because also I felt to be fascinated by these intellectual speculations, because it was gratifying to be part of the chosen ones, to feel special, and above everything, I believe the reason is why it went like this, because everything happened so slow, step by step, by which I mean that everything in the beginning, every tiny step towards this great confusion, in the beginning seemed logic and credible, and in the meantime we were like very slowly sliding into this condition without being aware of it, without noticing it. So eventually when I became aware of this thing, then what was really happening with us, I went to talk with my boyfriend right away, and then with the others from the group of 5s. And everybody agreed with me, but nobody wanted to go to talk with the teacher. They said, just let's go away. And in fact, they were also trying to convince me not to go to talk to him, because they warned me that he might make me confused again with his strategies and techniques. But anyway, I decided that I wanted to go to talk to him, and because I didn't want to just run away like a coward, because deep in myself I also felt gratitude to him, because in the first years he taught me also good things, and I just didn't have to, or I didn't want to forget about this goodness also. So I went to talk to him, I explained to him everything I was feeling, and he replied to me very gentle, kind, affectionate. So, but it was always the same technique. So everything is true, and the contrary of everything is also true. So he said that in fact there is no problem, it's just good. So anyway, I didn't get confused, and I thanked for him for all the good which he has given to me, and I told him that our story ended just then and there. So it ended, but at the same time also ended my first love story with my boyfriend, because anyway we understood that we were just not fit for each other because we were too different. So I was 28 years old at the time, and the first thing I did with my life after these radical changes that I decided to go back to the university. So I went back to the faculty of psychology, and then I graduated, and somehow the Sant just became for me a faraway, distant memory. And I never even thought of going back to Sanji, because I admit honestly, I just forgot that experience. And at some point, one of the boys from Terni, with whom I was initiated together, he sent a message to me that Sanji was coming to give a program just in Terni, and it was in the summer of 1996. So of course I thought, wow, he's just coming here, so I have to go to see him. That's nice. But of course I went with the spirit of being so self-assured that now I'm a different person. I had gone through lots of things. I'm more wise and everything will be different. But in fact I was mistaken, because as soon as I went for the first meditation at 7 o'clock, all at a sudden I found myself back to the same sensation like on the first encounter with him. The air was overcharged with that special energy, and the sensation of walking above the ground. And right away I perfectly remember the Simran, even if I wasn't repeating it for 15 years. And the only thing I could think about was, how could I forget about all this? So at the time in Terni in 96, the arrangements were made for the participants in a gym hall, a local gym hall, and we were all there. Again, many people, because at that point people came from all around the world. And I remember well that we were sitting outside at the open air, sitting on the ground in queues, and people passed by to give out the food for everybody. I remember Sanji coming and give darshan to us before he was accompanied to the place where he was accommodated. And right after the first meditation, sitting and having the lunch, I wanted to talk to Sirio ji. I felt the need to talk to him. And because also he was at the time the European representative of Sanji, so I wanted to tell him what happened to me. So I talked to him. Again, I was weeping, like shedding rivers of tears from my eyes. So I asked his advice and asked him to tell me what should I do. So he very simply told to me, just come back to Satsang and just come back on the path and be peaceful. So on that occasion I didn't have the chance to talk to Sanji, to have an interview with him, because we were really so many people that the only chance to go near him was to take a long queue and pass in front of him and look into his eyes for a moment and then move on. But it was very interesting, because that day I became very aware of an interesting fact, that during my psychological studies I was especially interested in the lead of research on which I was very concentrated, which was perfectly in harmony with the teachings of the masters, and this was in complete disharmony with the teaching, with the last theories of this yoga teacher. So I became aware that, like, as even my studies were just helping me to understand that I had to go back on the path, and I had to go back and take back the contact with reality and truth. So I began to attend again the weekly satsangs in Terni, and then after in Rome, and go to the ashram to participate in the retreats organized by Sirio ji. And well, I had still the time to send a letter to Sanji, in which I asked him certain things about the meditation and the sound, and also I told him that I did quit my job at the public administration in order to work as a psychologist. So he comforted me about the technique on the meditation and the sound, and he also wrote to me in his reply that it was a good thing what I did to change job and change my life. But anyway, I didn't have the chance to meet him again, because in 1997 he left his body, and when I got this news I felt so lost, like an orphan. So I felt the need right away to go to the ashram, where already there were many other satsangis who gathered there to be together. And I remember very well the day on which Sirio ji just came back from India, because he went for the funeral of Sanji, and he told us in details about this last greeting of our master. And the first times and the first days after the leaving of Sanji, I felt like destabilized, like the sensation that now with Sanji everything ended. But in fact, of course, it wasn't like this. And the very interesting that when I was asked to write this account, I did it. And after a few days, surprisingly, this yoga teacher, who is now very old, 92 years old, he just all of a sudden contacted me because he got my contacts through a common friend of ours. And he just simply called me. And just imagine, I haven't talked to him on the phone for 27 years, and I haven't met him for 40 years. So it was amazing, because just after few days I have written down these things. He called me after so many years, decades. And the even more surprising is that he just said with very similar words what happened to him as I have written it in my account, which is that he has been for years in a dark consciousness. And then he also told me about that it took a very long time for him to get out of this kind of darkness in which he got into, and that how he was feeling guilty and how he was surprised and shocked how he could do certain things in life and say certain things in life. So I could say many other things, but what I mainly would like to underline here or emphasize is that I am aware that the masters have given me an occasion now to understand everything better and to understand certain things which seem very important to me. So the first is that I thought, I was believing that I was over this story. But now I have understood that I wasn't, I haven't been, because after all these years, after even forgiving this yoga teacher to make me get lost in life for a while, but one thing that I haven't forgiven to myself, to have been following him for so long on the wrong way. And secondly, that really now the right time and the right moment has come to leave behind all this pride which blocked me, which made me seem like unforgivable, the human fragility of mine and that of others. And as for third, that in the long thread of all these happenings of this story, I have found my keywords to my personal path with Master Sirio. And these keywords are acceptance, gratitude, and forgiveness. So, to conclude, I would like to thank to the Divine Power for its surprising ways through which we are guided by him. So this was the story of Loretta, and I would like to thank very much to Loretta to anyway face this, because I have understood afterwards that it has been very difficult for her to recall all these. She told to me actually afterwards that for me it was like going back in time and live again all those happenings which I thought that they were closed for me, and in fact no. And it just really made me amazed, as on this part it is said that everything is done by the master, we are not the doers, and everything is perfect, that everything is in the will of God. And just think about it, that I asked Loretta to please do this account for me, and she accepted it. Just after a few days she sent it to me. This person about whom she was talking, she just called him after 27 years. Interesting. So I could say that the ways of the masters are always perfect, and we are so much taken care. So this story really showed me many things, and even though I wasn't presenting it to you in a conversational way, as you might be used to it, but I hope I could be good enough to recall the story for you, and that you also enjoyed listening to it, and you also found it very interesting and full of teachings again. And next episode, as always, comes after 2 weeks. And if you have anything to say, if you have anything to add, if you have anything to ask, then you can contact me through the siriopodcast@gmail.com. And you're welcome to follow this podcast, and if you like it, leave a comment. It's much appreciated. So, after 2 weeks, and to conclude this episode, we can again listen to a song by Master Sirio, which was written by him. It's in Italian, and he sings it himself, and it's about Sant Ajaib Singh. So the translation of the Italian text is: O Ajaib, I'm longing for you so much. My heart yearns for your beautiful face. How sweet are thy hints, how revealing is your company. At thy feet flows the sweet nectar. Thy form is the prototype of divinity, and in your every word and deed there is a constant message for the soul. Looking at your sweet face and listening to your sweet words, the soul feels naked and vulnerable throughout. Your satsang is a balm, curing the ills inflicted by the 5 cruel passions. Through it, you tell us the secret of the lovers. O Ajaib, I'm longing for you so much. My heart yearns for your beautiful face.
O Ajaib, ti desidero tanto. Il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. Ajaib, ti desidero tanto. il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. Quanto son dolci i tuoi cenni, quant'è rivelatrice la tua compagnia. Ai tuoi piedi scorre il dolce nettare. Quanto son dolci i tuoi cenni, quant'è rivelatrice la tua compagnia. Ai tuoi piedi scorre il dolce nettare. Ajaib, ti desidero tanto, il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. La tua forma è il prototipo della divinità, e in ogni tuo gesto è parola. La tua forma è il prototipo della divinità, e in ogni tuo gesto è parola. Vi è un messaggio costante per l'anima. Vi è un messaggio costante per l'anima. Ajaib, ti desidero tanto, il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. Guardando il tuo dolce viso e ascoltando le tue soavi parole, guardando il tuo dolce viso e ascoltando le tue soavi parole, l'anima si sente nuda e tutta vulnerabile. L'anima si sente nuda e tutta vulnerabile. Ajaib, ti desidero tanto, il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. Il tuo Satsang è un balsamo che cura i mali inflitti dalle 5 crudeli passioni. Il tuo Satsang è un balsamo che cura i mali inflitti dalle 5 crudeli passioni. Con esso ci comunichi il segreto degli amanti. Con esso ci comunichi il segreto degli amanti. Ajaib, ti desidero tanto, il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. Ajaib, ti desidero tanto. Il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto. Il mio cuore brama il tuo bel volto.